At long last, the public is finally able to get a feel for what Metaphor ReFantazio is bringing to the table. Atlus just put out an incredibly generous demo of this game where we get to play through anywhere between 4 and 6 hours of the whole intro portion of the game. And better yet, everything transfers over to the full game. If you get a chance to play through this demo, you don't have to worry about playing through the entire intro portion again. All of that transfers over to the full game, so this is basically just a head start on the game for whenever it releases. I feel like I'm only just now really getting acclimated to these pillar franchises by Atlus. Like, I just finished my first SMT game, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, and so I feel like I've just been kind of hyping myself up for Metaphor. So did this demo kind of scratch that itch that I was looking for from Atlus? Let's talk about it. So Metaphor ReFantazio is not Shin Megami Tensei, it's not Persona, it's not Catherine either, but if you've played these other Atlus games, you will feel pretty at home with Metaphor. Right off the bat, just talking about the good here with what we got to experience in this demo, I feel like the combat is one of the most unique things that this game has to offer. It is an incredibly unique blend of action RPG as well as turn-based RPG, especially whenever you get deeper into the game and you start leveling up. Weaker enemies that you run into out on the battlefield, you don't even have to jump into a battle with them if you don't want to. You can just wipe them out with a slash or two with your sword, just getting them out of the way, and you still get to reap all of the benefits of the experience for yourself as well as your archetypes, and we'll get into that as we further get into this first impressions video. But so far, the gameplay as a whole really is working for me. I really do like the way that the game goes about giving the player the upper hand when you jump into battle. If you see an enemy on the field that is a higher level than you, you have the option to gain an advantage on them by breaking down their, I guess, defenses a little bit, and you can stun the enemy by slashing them a couple of times and then jumping into a battle where they're stunned, and you get a couple of extra turns on the enemy. And I just love that the game really does incentivize you to kind of, be strategic out in the walking levels, like in the dungeons themselves and the level design. There is a little bit of strategy when it comes to, do you want to get the upper hand? Do you want to risk maybe getting hit by the enemy and them getting an upper hand on you? Or do you not want to risk any of that and just jump into a turn-based battle system with that enemy? I love that. And the turn-based battles are also very familiar if you're familiar, I guess, with any sort of turn-based battle system, whether it be the Final Fantasy series, the Dragon Quest series, and especially these other Atlus games like Persona or Shin Megami Tensei. You have the whole turn system where if you decide to pass a turn or you get a weak spot on an enemy, you get basically another turn on the enemy. You can use that to your advantage and continue to be strategic when deciding how you want to attack the enemy, what character you want to use which attacks on next so that you can maybe get more of an upper hand in the battle. There's a little bit of planning and a little bit of thinking that actually goes into these battles. Obviously, with a turn-based RPG, I think the more the merrier when it comes to actually implementing things that require a strategic mindset. How you want to scroll through your menus to use what attacks, what magic abilities, what defenses, items, things like that. But let's get into archetypes, because archetypes are the name of the game here. This is the job system, so to say. There are tons of jobs to pick through in the game, and each job can level up and you can gain more abilities with these jobs. For instance, some of the first few jobs that you have, just so to say, I know they have special names, but are essentially the freelancer, the first archetype that you get with your main playable character. You also get the warrior, which is more of a brute strength type character. You get a healer, which is, more on the defense side of things and helping out the rest of the party, as well as the mage, who specializes in magic attacks and defense and things like that, but aren't necessarily strong hitters physically. Especially when you're walking around in the library portion of the game, you kind of get a feel for what some of the other soon to be collected archetypes are in the game, and just the way that you go about building connections with other people out in this fantasy world or the real world for your playable characters. And that's how you really start to develop these archetypes and how you can put them in your repertoire and teach them to other players and kind of just play the game how you want in regards to its job system. I really like the way that it's all presented, kind of all tying into that social aspect that games like the Persona franchise are really familiar with. Outside of battle, there are many areas that you can walk around in, shops, characters to talk to, things like that, side quests, all of that good stuff that kind of comes with your typical JRPG. Nothing crazy fancy about the way that walking around the world is presented to you. You have the whole day and night cycle. You have some shops that are only available at night and some that are only available during the daytime, and the whole world is kind of moving on a clock. It's on a day-night cycle, and you're going through the course of time in this game. So you kind of have to be a little picky-choosy with how you want to structure your day. Do I want to spend my evening trying to go to this shop that's only open at night, or do I want to go and focus on getting these other quests done? I know that it's going to eat up a lot of my time here in the evening, and it's going to move me into the next day. So if I decide to do one thing over the other, I might not get a chance to do that other thing in this time frame that I want to do it. I don't want to just over explain it. I think you understand kind of what I mean by that day and night cycle, but that's how it works here in the open areas that you get to walk around in the game. It's a system that I'm not incredibly familiar with. I personally am kind of a completionist when it comes to games like this. One of the reasons why Final Fantasy VII Rebirth felt so overwhelming to me is because I'm someone who likes to do everything that I can do before I move on to the next main thing. I don't like having things in the backlog to do for later on. I don't like the idea of possibly missing out on something, but that's kind of the name of the game here. So if that's you, awesome. I think on the other hand, it just incentivizes just more playthroughs of the game. And before we actually talk about the plot and the story and the main kind of thing that a lot of people come to JRPGs for is, how are they actually presenting this story to us? What's it going to make me think about? How is it going to make me feel? I do want to talk a little bit about just the overall presentation as well, because I personally love how this entire game is presented. Visually, the game is stunning, artistically speaking, whether it be the anime-styled cutscenes or the 3D environments that you're walking around in, or in the other kind of 3D cutscenes, all of that stuff. I really love the way that the visuals are represented in places like the sky, the clouds, things like that. Whenever you're even just looking at the map, how all of the map is designed as well, whether it's actually the map that you're walking around on or the world map where you're going on a carriage to another location. I love the way all of the visuals are presented. I didn't really get a chance to play a whole lot of Catherine back in the day, but I got to play a few hours of it. I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, before we got all of the re-releases and stuff like that. And I feel like the overall art design when it comes to the characters really does remind me of Catherine, especially obviously when we're looking at the horned characters in this game. A lot of it is kind of striking a Catherine feel in my mind. The music is also phenomenal. Even before I clicked start on the game, I downloaded the game onto my PlayStation 5, and before I even clicked the icon to start the game, there's a song that's playing in the background, and I'm just immediately brought to that feeling of sitting in I was gonna say cathedral, but just sitting in like an auditorium and seeing this whole game live in concert. That's the feeling that I got. I immediately started listening to the music of this game and just thought, I want to go see this in concert. This is probably nuts. It's probably crazy to see the soundtrack in this game played live. So I don't know if that's going to happen in the future, but if they ever come to the Austin, Texas area, you better believe I'm going to go do everything that I can to go see this game played live in concert. Town themes, cutscene music, battle themes, all of that stuff. Just when you're in the dungeons walking around, there's so much music that is just pleasing to listen to. Some of it kind of goes under the radar, but whenever you notice it, all of those noticeable songs are made to stick in your mind. And even just throughout these last couple of days that I've been playing this demo, I've just been thinking a lot about the music that I hear in this game. And when it comes to video game music, that's kind of the goal. You want to make a song where people are even humming those songs just in their day-to-day life, going to work, humming those songs, you know, just thinking about the music in your game. And I've been thinking about the music here, so I, so far, love the music. But let's talk about the plot. Let's talk about the story. Let's talk about kind of how all of this is presented to us, because this is the start of the game. The way that the story is presented here is the first impression. How is the first impression? Does it leave a lasting mark? Does it make me want to buy the game and see where the story goes? Yes to all of that. The world is incredibly high fantasy, so obviously it's going to be a little hard for them to just make the intro to the game something that is so easily digestible for the average player. There is definitely some work that you have to put in as the player to really try to understand what's going on politically, with the religions, with the race of other creatures and factions kind of in this world, how magic works. It's pretty dense, and as someone who loves high fantasy, I'm all for it. But for me, a lot of the things that worked in this story came whenever the player was kind of ripped outside of the immediate realities around him, talking about things like the religious side of the world, the political side of the world. When he's taken out of that and starts going into things that are new to everybody around them, things like the archetypes and the things that are brand new to him and the surrounding characters, I loved all of that stuff. I felt that the intrigue and the questions that all of that stuff is raising in the characters' minds and in the players' minds, I felt like all of it was presented very well. So overall, whether it's the game's presentation, the game's story, the game's gameplay itself, I'm pretty positive on all of it. So far, this game has been giving to me what I have been looking for in an RPG for a little while. There's some things that I'm personally going to have to get acclimated to, like the whole calendar cycle of the game, but things like that are easy to get into. I personally am here for things like its story. The themes that the game are trying to present to the player, that's another huge thing about this game. This game is called Metaphor ReFantazio. The game is largely a metaphor. ReFantazio translating to re-fantasy. It's this retelling of what fantasy is. The game, and maybe this is a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, depending on who you are, the game does not shy away from really trying to hammer home, guys, there's a lot of metaphor here. We are telling you a story that is applicable to other situations, to the real world, to the fantasy world. There is metaphor to be unfolded in this game. Some of it is a little subtle, but most of it is fairly upfront and in your face. Things like the humans, right? They're these monsters. Things like the book. This book tells of a fantasy world where everyone is in harmony with one another, and it's kind of this utopia. It's like just this, oh my gosh, everyone is getting along. There's no war. There's no arguments. There's no fighting. It's this idea that is a fantasy because it's not what our reality is like, and it's not what their reality is like either in this game. But also, you're looking at the pages, the art in this book, and it's clearly supposed to show you what the real world, what our meat space is like. The developers of this game are clearly not shying away from trying to tell us the message that they are trying to get across. Like I said, there are some instances where it is kind of subtle, and whenever you're able to pick up on something like that, you can feel like, oh, okay, I kind of see what they're going there. That's very interesting. I'm curious to kind of see where that goes from there. But then in most other cases, the game is very upfront and forward about what they're trying to tell you. I'm not necessarily here to say which is the right way to go about it in this particular medium. I just felt that the game overall did a good job of doing both the showing and the telling of what their message is. And so far, the game hasn't done one specific tactic better over the other. But things like imagery, and you go and you meet characters like Moore, and this guy is just straight up Carl Jung. Like he is really hammering home this idea of this collective unconscious and these archetypes and things like that. This is the type of thing that I love in video games. So whether it's beaten over the head or it's super subtle, I don't necessarily pick a side there. I am really just trying to devour as much of their ideas as I possibly can, just so that I can try to think about them and see how does it implement into my life. Do I agree with what they're saying? Do I disagree with what they're saying? How can I put into practice maybe the things that I learn from a game like this? That's kind of what it feels like this whole game is trying to do. It wants you to think about these things. It wants you to compare and contrast what the fantasy world is and what the real world is. Is their real world a fantasy world? Is their fantasy world our real world? Should we try to make their fantasy world our real world? You know, things like that. We're supposed to be thinking about all of these other concepts and ideas. So yes, overall, I'm really enjoying this game, and I'm almost certainly going to be purchasing it. I do, before I shut this video down, I want to talk about some of the things that I felt were a little bit mixed. There were a couple of things that I really didn't like about the game, so I'll talk about those here. One thing that really kind of caught me off guard was just how much was going to be happening on the screen whenever you are walking around, say, a town or something like that. I found there to be an overwhelming amount of text just popping up on the screen, whether it's people talking to you in your party, or you can see people in the distance just saying like blah blah blah, or you get close to them and you can hear what they're talking about, or maybe sometimes you're not even walking next to anybody, but you can just see some text crawl up on the screen on the top in the center of just townspeople talking around you. And then you go and you talk to other NPCs as well, and you can hear other people talking as well. It's really stimulating, if I'm being honest. I know Atlus is actively taking feedback from this demo and making some changes into the final game. So if there's maybe one thing that I could kind of put my hat in the ring for, I would just say let's maybe limit some of the dialogue that just pops up on the screen whenever you are walking around. I'm okay with just walking up to a character and pressing the talk button and just hearing what they have to say. And if I don't talk to anybody, I'm fine with not hearing any other words around me. I know they're trying to make it feel like a very lived-in world, and to that extent, I feel like it is working. Like I would say, even though I'm complaining about how much dialogue is just popping up on the screen while you're walking around the world, it has felt more filled in. It has felt like there are more people in this town than maybe you would see in another town, in another RPG, just because there's less text on the screen in those other games. However, there are just moments where I feel like, okay, I just got to get out of here. I just got to move on to the next thing because I don't want to sit around and talk to all these people. I'm tired of seeing all of the text pop up on the screen. It's kind of a nitpick, kind of not. Like I said, it's just something that just felt kind of overstimulating to me just whenever you're walking around in a town. And kind of in the vein of what I was talking about earlier, with this being a high fantasy world with lots and lots of lore and lots of just aspects about its economy and its cultures and all of that stuff. One thing here, and this is kind of just like a mixed thing because I'm kind of a fan of this thing, but I can absolutely see why other people are not, but that's the data logs. If you've played Final Fantasy 13 or you've heard discourse about Final Fantasy 13, undoubtedly you have heard about the data logs. The data logs in Final Fantasy 13 are essentially the way that you are able to best digest the story in that game. You are going to hear lots of terminology throughout the game, and some of it is explained, much of it is not explained, but you can always open up your main menu and go to a portion of the menu called the data logs, where you can read about all of the people, all of the locations, all of the cultural aspects, all of the kind of made up fantasy words that they use to describe gods and curses and things like that. All of that is explained in a menu that you have to read. And so far, I have felt that all of the need to know stuff about Metaphor ReFantazio is fairly well explained in the game. But if you really want to dive deep into the world, if you want to understand how it's all working, how all of the different tribes are talking about each other and how they all feel about each other and how the world works economically and how the government and the religions and the monarchies and all of that stuff, how it all works, most of that really is only fully explained and described in, I forget what they're called, which is why I'm just calling it the Datalogs. There is a menu portion in this game where you can go and read about this entire world, and as you're playing, new pieces of information are added, whether they be little character details or world location details, information about how the money is used, how the magic is used, all of that stuff. All of it is found in the Datalogs. So even though I personally don't have a huge issue with opening up the menu and looking at that stuff, I can see how many players are like, come on guys, why can't you just explain it to me? Why can't it just be something that's easily digestible through a cutscene? Why, you know, a character could have just told it to me and had voice acting and everything, but now I'm having to open up my menu because I want to know a little bit more about this character or the background of the town that I'm in. So now I have to go and open up a menu and read for minutes and minutes and minutes, just talking about the economy and the world, the state of the world and all of these people. So that's definitely a nitpick. But when it comes to things like the writing and all of that stuff, I'm totally fine with all of it. I've definitely seen a lot of people online talk about the subtlety is not there. It beats you over the head too much. Like I had already fully gone over earlier in this video, that really is just up for you to decide. Do you like the over explanation of the metaphors that they are trying to present to you? Do you want things a bit more held closer to the chest? That's up for you to decide. Overall, I feel like the game is telling a message, telling a story in a way that works for me. So I appreciate it. But yes, I'm absolutely going to be purchasing Metaphor ReFantazio whenever it releases. I am so grateful that we have these companies who are releasing like the first couple of hours of their game so that we can see how they are putting their best foot forward with these games. And all of it transfers over, so I am so grateful for all of that. So have you played the Metaphor ReFantazio demo? Are you just waiting for the full game to come out? Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions down below, and while you are down there, go ahead and like the video, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell as well so that you're notified whenever new videos like this come out. And if you're new here to my channel and you want to talk to more people like me and other people who like this type of content, go ahead in the description and consider joining the Discord as well. We love to talk about games over there. You know, I'm just trying to build this community of people, so if that is you and you are interested in joining this community of like-minded individuals who love story-driven video games, who love RPGs, go ahead and consider joining the Discord down below. But yeah, I am incredibly excited for Metaphor ReFantazio. I'm gonna buy the game. I'm super pumped to see where the story goes, and I love the combat system here in the game. I'm excited also just to talk to you all, so don't go ahead and leave all of your comments about just the way that all of the philosophy is brought up. I love talking about that sort of stuff as well. So with all of that said, I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.